and welcome to one more episode in Ultrax Football 101 Talks. My name is Marko Matushinsky, and in this great episode, we have Antonio with me, Antonio Robustelli. Antonio, hi, welcome to this podcast, welcome to this episode.
Hi, Marco. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Nice to have you here, and I know that everybody who is listening to this will definitely enjoy it because we have amazing topics. We will cover uh, topics like communication, background of you, of course, preseason testing, programming, so everything from your experience. And I would just say that how we met, and it was on a conference in Turkey, am I right, in Istanbul?
Yeah, we met it was in May, I think, last May, and
Yeah.
the National Conference of Athletic Performance and Health, and it was very, great events, and I was very also happy to meet you and the rest of the guys at Ultrax, and you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you for that. And yeah, this was the reason for this episode. I listened to your presentation and I was interested about uh, your way how you are looking at speed work and endurance programming. This was the topic also there on the conference, and we will discuss definitely about it. But before we start, like a classical short introduction about yourself. So your brief background, how you start working as a coach, strength conditioning coach, and your journey, in this, and what is your current role and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, sure. I've been starting now. It's about almost more than 20 years, about 23 years, working within the field of human performance, and I'm mainly working internationally. Of course, I grew up in Italy, but I've been studying in United Kingdom. So that's for as it relates to my educational background, which is very wide because it's crossing sports science, sports medicine, and strength and conditioning. I've mainly started, more than about 15 years ago, uh, switching from the strength and conditioning, the traditional
Yeah.
strength and conditioning role, to something more, I would like to say, more holistic, starting
Broad.
looking
Yeah.
at covering different aspects of human performance. Basically, my main roles as of today is to manage the different aspects of human performance, start ranging from strength and conditioning, so the physical preparation process, to the rehabilitation and all the sports medicine aspects associated with performance, and the management of the different staff members within an organization, whether it is a football or a team sport, or
Yeah.
an organization like a governing body, and so on. So this is, uh, of course, if I'm looking at back in the days, my role now is going to look a little bit different respect than the start of my work in this area. However, uh, in the up at the moment, I'm involved both on the practitioner side, working as a consultant with
Yeah.
both with team sport and individual athletes. I've been working with athletes competing in the last 5 Olympics, and on the educational side, as a lecturer in universities, I've been leading in the last 2 years. I've been leading a postgraduate program in strength and conditioning as a PG diploma in the main sports institute in Asia, which is the National Institute of Sports in India, under the Sports Authority of India, where we balance the academic side by uh, trying to educate the next generation of Indian S&C coaches, and the training of the athletes as the National Institute of Sports is a national center of excellence where Indian Olympians, as well as the higher level Indian athletes are coming there for, training during the year. So this is what my job and my
Wide
role
area.
looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing, Antonio, how wide area you are covering. And when you say like from sports science, strength conditioning, education, PhD programs and diplomas, so it's a I can imagine that your day don't have enough hours. Do you have some time for yourself working on everything like this?
Yeah, but of course things are busy, but that's extremely important from my perspective. But this is valid for any uh, activities, any work in any area, to still avoid overworking. What I mean, get stuck in thinking about work all day long. We discuss about, especially in our field,
Yeah.
we manage the recovery and regeneration aspect of our athletes, and sometimes we didn't take and when we didn't care about how mental regeneration and recording, how to manage the workload of people, working in the industry. So that's a very important aspect.
Yeah, I cannot agree more because we as strength conditioning coaches sometimes can put too much work on ourselves. We forget to rest and to even organize normally our private lives. And I would like to use this opportunity then to start with the first topic, and it's about the organization. You as a strength conditioning coach or like let's say head of performance or educator, but also the importance of communication. So these both sides, communication and organization. We now saw a lot of research that are studying the importance of communication on injury prevention, the organization. I don't know when players are coming back from injuries, what's the process behind it when they are ready to come back. So how do you look at those two things, like communication and organization in the industry of sports?
Yeah, that's a very key topic from my perspective. In terms of communication, we need to realize that communication is a skill. Of course, there are some individuals who are genetically, say, predisposed to being, better communicator, respect than others, but it still is a skill. So, but if we would like to define communication, uh, the in 80 at the beginning of the 80s, Force and Tropman did a good job in in trying to define what communication is, and they defined communication as a transmission and exchange of information, conveying meaning between two or more people. And communication in that sense is recognized as a critical piece in the puzzle that is, the art and science of coaching. So, and probably sometimes even the most important element. So coaches need good communication skills in order to give technical and tactical instructions, being able to manage their teams of coaches, interact with parents when we are talking about grassroots level, when interacting with parents, with administrators, and to provide also psychological support to the athletes. So the ability to communicate effectively is one of the distinguishing factors of an expert coach sometimes. And uh, I would say that while novice coaches will focus on finding ways to help athletes and players understand instruction from the coach perspective, the expert coaches on the other side will try to communicate more effectively based on their understanding of the expert coaches should be able to properly understand a player's perspective, a player's behavior. So this is what differentiates novice and expert coaches. Therefore, finding what appeals to your athletes or players is central, is key to personal development as a coach. So a good communication doesn't just increase coaching skill, but also impacts directly on the player.
I could not agree more about that part. What you said, that the communication and organization are impacting the player, but also impacting the whole staff members. And when you are working in a team environment, I always say this, but I don't know from your side, but from my side of, let's say, experience working with different coaches and staffs in the last 12 or 13 years, the main problems that we faced were because of the lack of channel communication or the language of communication. And especially when you're coming like a coach, let's say from Croatia, working in Spain, or from your side, when you're coming from Italy, maybe working in India, there are different channels and languages of communication. So have you faced these kind of challenges from your side?
I would say, of course, but this happened uh, because of the traditional view of of a of a team, of a staff, because most of the time we're talking about football, so we're talking about an organization as a team, and this happened when we look at the staff and teams as a static entity, instead. But the reality is that a coaching, a performance staff, but the team in general is a complex system where each uh, element, with let's call it unit, uh, each each unit is affecting what's going to happen in the outcome of the team. Okay, so that's important when trying to manage and organize a staff, to first identify the key structures and the key macro areas, whether it's about the physical development team, whether it's the medical team, the nutritional, the psychological team, for the and after identifying and recognize the key structures and the key units, in order to properly manage, it's important to synthesize, like a zoom. If you zoom out, you can have a broader view of what's going to
Yeah,
happen. If you're zooming in, okay, you are just letting the medical team doing their own job,
medical. Yeah,
the coaching team and the tactical team doing their own job. At the end of the day, the
you need to
what's going
work
to happen,
together.
you're not connecting the dots, of each staff of each areas, and sometimes this is something that has to do with the ego. In sports, ego is
It's a
unfortunately
problem sometimes.
an
Yeah,
issue, and uh, for a person who is in charge to organize a staff, manage a staff, being able to minimize ego and trying to involve each team members in the decision-making process, okay, trying to foster a sense of ownership. If I have a team members, a staff members who is not providing any, is not involved in the decision-making process, okay, so we are taking one element of this complex system out of the
outside. Yeah,
equation, okay, and this is in fact impacting negatively the outcome. So I think that most of the issues that you mentioned in your question are related to the vision of a team as a static entity where the each individual is not considered as dynamic, but it's just a professional who has to complete a task, okay? And that's it, okay? But completing a task without understanding how a task is interacting with the environment, with all the other members of the team, is not going to provide any value. And at the end of the
Solution,
day,
yeah.
who is suffering? The players' performance.
Players, teams, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, connection with all the silos or the pillars that you build is so important. And like you said, if you miss one of the pillars, let's say strength conditioning stuff or analyst stuff, you're not involving them inside your decision making, then you are missing maybe a big piece of your work and maybe quality work. So we cannot agree more that solid communication and solid organization process inside of the club organization institute that you said it's so important. And with this good communication organization, we can build good preseason and maybe even better programs. And this brings me to the second topic of this talk is about preseason, building the preseason, and like every preseason, let's say in football starts with some kind of a testing or idea of testing. So, what's your opinion on this, and what's your approach to building the preseason and building, let's say, the testing procedures with your teams? We can have an example, let's say, working in a team setting or maybe in individual sector.
Yeah. That's this is a topic that is extremely important for me because when talking about preseason testing, let's talk about the team sports. When talking about preseason testing, we need to first understand the meaning and value of testing. So one of the main tendency that I noticed today in the sports industry is that sometimes professionals working in the football industry they design the testing programs, not based on the perspective, on the real needs of the sport, of the organization, but most of the time based on what others people are doing. Okay.
Yeah, that's quite
without
often.
without developing a proper critical thinking about, okay, wait, is this metric important for me? Of course, when it comes about collecting data, it is true that the more data can I have on an athlete, the better is my decision making can be. That's true, but that the metrics that you collect needs to be relevant to the sport, okay, and also needs to be used. Most of the time, preseason is about showing up that we are using this tech, this tech, this tech. But my question is, because this is something that happened most of the time, because one of the things that I'm doing is that some coaching staff ask for my help in designing, the pre-season testing, even in terms of technology implementation. Okay, which kind of technology can be useful? Is more is less, which one is less time consuming, and so on. So that's important to understand the meaning and value of testing, and also understanding the difference between, we often hear about, testing the readiness of the athlete, but I notice that there is a confusion between what some people, how they understand readiness, because it's important to define the difference between preparedness and readiness. And readiness is something more related to the fluctuations that we can
Like,
naturally encounter during the season. But at the beginning of the season, because readiness is just about a screenshot of a specific day, okay?
yeah,
Uh,
the
uh,
status of that day.
yeah, because I can have an athlete with very high level of preparedness, which is the total of the physical, tactical, technical, mental, level of preparation. But that athletes maybe can show up low readiness on a given day because of sleep issues, nutritional issue, illness, but uh, it's important to understand that testing is has to be planned and periodized like training. So timing and frequency matter. Okay, so at the beginning of the season, it's important that coaching staff, medical staff, first they should speak the same language. So testing
That's it.
should
Yeah.
be easily understandable from each part. Sometimes it's still very, very common to find head coaches who let SNC coaches and sports scientists, okay, do your own testing, like, you play with your own text. I don't care about that. But this is something that has to be avoided, and this is something where systems like athlete management software can help, because each member of the staff can have access to all the information, okay, related to the athlete, and uh, this can improve to the and better support the sharing of a common vision, between the different staff
Yeah.
members. So
Everybody can see the same thing, let's say, inside.
exact baseline is important in preseason. So it's important to create a baseline testing, because allow to benchmark athletes and allows to better understand fluctuations during the season. Okay, and also establishing how to say a normal bandwidth of variation is going to add more
Yeah.
intelligence to the monitoring process and intervention. So choosing the right metrics, today, if you open a software after performing a jump test session with a force plate, you can look, you can have hundreds of metrics, okay? But it's important at the beginning of the season that staff decide, okay, I have 5 relevant metrics that I need the most for my players, and keep monitoring these 5 metrics during the season. Okay, so it's something that you have to make and keep consistent during the season.
Yeah, I like how you divide the readiness and testing preparedness of the athlete. So, like defining the profile, but also how this profile is changing over time. Because I think what I see, like in football, and what is happening is that they now just start to do like this readiness testing sessions without proper profile defining, like the classical testing day. I think, and I agree with you here, is that both of the things are important. The first one is to establish the profile, define like variation, and how this variation is changing over time. But to ask one more thing, or let's say to be more specific, you mentioned in an example like 5 metrics. And from your side, let's say, what's are your go-to 5 testing procedures, or 5, or I don't know, 7, 3 metrics that you are checking constantly when testing?
I would say that Yeah, that's very important because before going, answering your specific question, I would like to mention that sometimes the word testing and monitoring are being used interchangeably, but they have different purposes because at the beginning of the season, in pre-season, the main goal is to test because I want to understand what's the level, the baseline level of my player, of my athlete, at different layers. So at psychological level, at biomechanical level, at neuromuscular level, at biochemical level. Uh, this testing serves as a foundation because then monitoring is getting into play because in the pre-season, I'm interested in the short-term, adaptation. Okay, so based on the testing, I'm gonna monitor during the weeks to understand if my interventions are and my training are effective. During the season, we are gonna look at the long-term trends
Long-term
and long-term
development. Yeah.
adaptation. Yeah, from my perspective, you mentioned the metrics. It's I don't have an exact answer related to the 5 or 6 metrics or my go-to metrics for uh, you know force platform testing or plantar pressure testing because I always change based on the context, on the sport, and on the situation. But uh, I have, of course, some things that I consider to be fundamental, depending on even if it's a team sport or an individual sport. So my testing philosophy is again considering the human being as a complex system. Okay, so I'm trying to get a lot of information about the different systems who are usually not showing up in a regular performance testing. So from my perspective, uh, only looking at force characteristics, force velocity curves, without putting the characteristics into the context, I mean, looking at the different contractile properties of the neuromuscular system. So I usually use the TMG, the myotonometry to understand the contractile properties. But for me, one of the things that is going to provide very insightful metrics are related to physiological signals that give me information about the how the athletes are able to cope internally with the load that we put on them.
Yeah.
That in the last years, heart rate variability has become very, very used in
Useful.
sport
Yeah.
with the
Used and popular.
wearables. Yeah, but heart rate variability is an incomplete matrix because HRV only gives us information about the cardiac part of the autonomic nervous system, okay? The cardiac control of the ANS. So it's not give us a full picture about the recovery processes, the ability, to properly cope with the stressors. So for me, psychophysiological stress profile is something that is of paramount importance. I always monitor how an athlete responds to stressors at different levels. So how the respiratory system, how the cardiac system,
Cardiac
how
system. Yeah.
absolutely. So just to give you an example, every athlete I work with at the beginning of the season is being tested with different, biosignal monitoring. So temperature, heart rate, skin conductance. This is what electroencephalography, EMG, all these elements provide information about the ability of an athlete to react and cope with the stress. So in that way, I can identify area to work with, to work on, to improve, in order to make the force capabilities, more efficient. And this allows me to better understand how to manage the workload and recovery balance.
So you hit and you check from different aspects, like the mental aspect, the cardiac aspect, pulmonary, muscular. And I agree with you about the mentioning heart rate variability. It's a great tool, useful tool, now quite used in football, but still it's not telling us the full story, like you said, in the muscles. And with this, you gave us like your perspective of monitoring, how you see the monitoring cycle when it comes to dose and response. But to add one more thing here is, if I may, is about RPE or subjective grade. It's also something that it's in some cultures quite popular. In some cultures, people are still skeptical about it. So do you use also this kind of feedback when it comes to the whole monitoring puzzle?
Are you referring to RPE?
To RPE.
Yeah, I'm using the RPE, of course, but I never use the RPE in isolation. I mean, I always trying to get some data and information by mixing and blending subjective assessment and feedback with objective feedback when I can, because I'm always interested in understanding how an athlete is able to feel the load imposed on his body. Okay, so RP sometimes is alone is not enough. And if you trying to put in place some strategies that allow you to get a blend of subjective and objective, this is going to be more interesting. Of course, that's not easy. Okay, so if you are interested in a feedback related to the training session, okay, RP is good from the player, but you should not base your own decisions in terms of intensity planning, in terms of recovery, only based on the subjective feedback.
Yeah.
That's why even when using GPS, when using GPS alone without heart rate monitoring, is not giving us a full picture. Sometimes today seems like heart rate monitoring has become something, I don't know, old-fashioned, because it's not being used as it should be, probably because it's a little bit let's say difficult in terms of physiology to understand, but still is a fundamental aspect to take into account. So when you have information about the heart rate response, during a training session, and you match it with GPS metrics and with subjective feedback of the player, you can also try to understand if a player does not have a good, how to say, feeling, of the load imposed on his body,
Yeah.
or a player sometimes is lying about the you know the sensation of the training session, and this will give you also good information about some psychological traits of the players. So we don't have to we have to remember that we are still uh, working with human beings
The
and
people, that's it.
complex systems. So we need to understand that every detail, every word has is related to a complex interaction of emotions, thoughts, impressions. So this is where the the science uh, part is mixing with the art, of coaching.
Yeah.
And with art of coaching is also uh, being able to understand a player and contextualize, let's say, even a feedback that a player is giving you into the context of the whole environment.
I like how you attack the problem from different perspectives and you try to explain your answer from different uh, areas, like when it comes to monitoring. And this is how I also try to approach. You need to know what is happening on a training session, then you need to check internal response, subjective, how hard it was, according to the load that you done or that it's exposed to, like the GPS data. One without the other, it's not telling the full story. And yeah, I think maybe this is the way how the monitoring process should look like. But it's always combination of art and science or data. So every aspect. Well, this on the other side, art is helping the science, but also the science is helping the art maybe to make better sessions, like you said. And let's say about building strength sessions in your work. And we all know that there are a lot of different philosophies when it comes to strength training in football, different ways to use it. Some teams are doing strength training before sessions, after sessions, sometimes double sessions. It's a lot of, it's a wide topic, but just to we can start simply. So how you see uh, strength training when it comes to working with football players, when when you are coming to the club or someone is coming to you as a, let's say, individual work.
Yeah, it looks like today, the magical, formula is about trying to find new new ways of doing things, or trying uh, to uh, to use old tools, but giving the new names in order to be, modern or innovative. But
Yeah,
as it relates,
this is so good. This is so good that you said, like, something that's been used for the last 20 years, we
yeah,
change maybe some name or something, and
yeah,
we
but
act
most
that this is something like
sure.
new thing. But yeah,
As it relates to strength training, you mentioned the when to lift, and yeah, I would say that I'm not a big fan of the post game lifting, that today is becoming, a trend in some sports. I understand that the schedule is changed respect than years ago. So there is the schedule of competition and training is going to be congested. It's become congested. But as it relates to strength training, my how to say uh, my um, my philosophy is very, very simple. I mean, the goal of strength training during the season, we're talking about a team sport,
Team
should
sports.
be, maintaining the strength that you develop during the preseason. I don't like to provide too much strength training stimulus for development because you don't have time. During the season, you only have to maintain. So I think that there is a way to proper place strength training sessions during the week, during the microcycle. Post game lifting, from my perspective, is I'm not a big fan for the simple reason that after a competition, after a game, mentally, the players needs to recover. So what's the goal of the post-game lifting? The goal of the post-game lifting is active recovery? I don't think so. So
Yeah.
the mentally has different is when a player who is performing a post-game lifting is a player who didn't play, okay, who actually didn't play. So taking advantage of that window is important. But this led to another issue. If it's a evening game, okay, we are keep providing stimulus in a time window that is very, very close to the bedtime. Okay, so this is going to increase the sympathetic activity, close to the bedtime. Okay, we are providing some stimulus for strength. Okay, but it is worth, because are we impacting the recovering during the night? Are we thinking about that? So this is why I'm not a big fan of the post game lifting from my perspective.
Yeah. It depends on the goal that you want to accomplish, and
Yeah, sure.
like you said, is it worth it to do 3 sets of 2 exercises after a game if you have a close game after that, or if you have sleeping hours close to that? So maybe cost benefit analysis here is coming to an end. Like maybe it's better to do and focus on recovery than these 2 sets. Yeah, and in strength training, uh, let's say if you are working with someone who is starting, working with you, or someone who is like more experienced inside of the strength training and he have more experience, do you have, well, what's your approach here? I suppose that you are not using the same movements, or the goals are not the same. So how is your approach, to the training gauge concept?
Yeah, of course, it's gonna be different if I'm planning strength training for experienced athletes or players, or a novice, so a youth player. The difference is not just about. It's not really about the type of exercises or the type of movement, but the difference is mainly in the frequency of training and the volume and intensities at which we plan the training, and also the type of load prescription that we use. Another example of a tool that now is extremely popular is the VBT, the velocity based training,
Velocity
and
based
that's
training, yeah.
a very good example of what I said earlier about the old things and new things. VBT, if you look at most of the VBT advertising and VBT marketing, it seems like it has been introduced recently. but we have it since decades. I remember that I started using VBT with the old Tendo unit, from Slovenia, more than 15 years ago, with linear position transducer. I've been using. One of the things that I would say that I will never use VBT with youth players, but this is something that I would use with most experienced, because at the very beginning, VBT makes sense when a player, an athlete, is able to properly understand the concept of velocity of movement during the execution of an exercise. With young youth players, the focus at the very beginning should be on letting them gradually manage the movement under increasing load. So they should be able to manage high load, progressively. Otherwise, it's not going to be strength training. If we want to especially in football, there is still today large use of tools, such as there are still football teams who doesn't have a very equipped gym with power rack, with barbells,
still not.
plates, but they are just having some TRX, Bosu ball, some very light dumbbells, and so with youth players, it's important to understand, to let them understand how to manage load, and increasing in loads. Okay, and then as you progress, we can focus on letting them understand, the importance of velocity of movement. Okay, this is an important differentiation. Of course, experienced players, they are most suited to use higher volumes. Okay, so but it all depends on their previous history of strength training.
Strength training, yeah.
The choice of exercise is also important, because exercises are not like dogma. They are not sculpted in stone. So exercises should be tailored on the individuality. So I'm not a big fan of saying, okay, this exercise should be used because of because it's the best exercise to develop lower body strength. Okay, it all depends on the force vectors. It all depends on the direction of force application relevant to that sport. It all depends on the timing. On the different sports have different ground contact time needs, and they require different timing of force
methods,
generation, force capabilities in the force velocity spectrum. So that's very important, and I would say that this led to another element, which is related to the post-activation potentiation that we often see today in sport.
A lot of articles and blogs are written on this topic, on post-activation potentiation, especially in football, in match day -1, match day, game day priming.
Again, priming is nothing new, but from my perspective is not something necessary at all costs. Has some values, has some purpose, especially when the priming before a training session or before a match is nothing new. But the question here is, with proper planning, okay, especially in the microcycle, which is the most powerful tool for an SNC coach, how to plan the week of training and how you alternate the load during the week in season. That's the most important planning tool for SNC coaches. So the question is, but why? What's the goal of priming? Okay, the goal of priming is to let the athletes physically ready to perform, but we don't need a a priming session to let the athletes being physically ready to perform, because otherwise this means that the work that you're doing during the week is not good enough. Okay,
you missed
priming,
something, yeah.
priming is good because we can prepare. That's why I like to use a different term. We prepare the athlete to perform. Not they are already physically ready. We are not letting them be physically ready with a priming session. We let them being physically ready to perform. Okay, in terms of keeping up the tone of the muscle, ready to exert, and to manage the force that we are producing. And that's also important to increase and make the players alert. So increasing alertness is extremely important, because what we want to do is to decrease the influence of the braking pedal, that is the parasympathetic system. We want to decrease that braking in order to fuel the performance, especially in team sport, in team sports where a high sympathetic output at the very beginning of the game is important. So if you ask me about is priming necessary, I would say it's not necessary at all costs. So, but can be useful, absolutely yes, if proper planning with the right purpose can be useful to prepare a player, an athlete to perform, especially in normalizing, in keeping the tone of the muscle at the optimal level.
Ready. Yeah, and this part of the strength training that you said, and we talk now, when you talk about activation and getting the muscles ready for the match day, because match day, and well, this is what we are preparing for and what we are preparing the athletes, and we are doing the whole microcycle because of that match day. And let's jump then to the other side of the spectrum, and it's about the endurance part of, let's call it like this, the running part, or the cardiorespiratory part of training. And let's keep it on a match day and compensation session, not to talk, let's say, general. Well, we can cover also that, but let's use and let's hear your approach to endurance programming on the match day -1 and match day structures, and let's connect this with compensation training session. How do you see this problem or this topic? How do you manage to hit the main goals with the whole groups of athletes who played more, who played less, who did not play? This is a quite interesting part, and it's also connected a lot with the periodization, the microcycle, like you said, and hitting on the right timing, the right amount of sprinting and endurance is quite tricky. And how do you solve this equation?
Yeah, that you mentioned that a key element when planning conditioning during within a microcycle, which is you mentioned the compensation session. That's very important when planning conditioning. Yeah, of course, about volume and intensity. Yeah, but it's important to properly understand the concept of alternation of the energy systems during a week, in terms of which kind of system are we stressing in a given day, and how long it takes for that system to properly recover the energy stores. So when it comes to planning, you mentioned the sprint work, managing endurance and sprint work. It's important to properly to understand how to manage the conditioning session based on the intensity level and the number of training sessions that you have planned per day. If you have one training session per day, if you have a double session morning and evening, it's important to properly to give the proper order, during within the session. Okay, sometimes basic elements such as the order of execution is it's sometimes overlooked. Activities that require more involvement of the central nervous systems, that require more CNS activities, always has to be placed before, activities that are more, metabolic in nature. So when talking about different thing is if I'm planning some lactic power, work, respect that some alactic and short acceleration work. Sometimes when or consulting with football teams, or when providing staff education, when I go to football teams to provide staff education, especially on speed development, one of the questions that coaching staff make is how can we find the right time to place speed work in terms of technical and speed development work. Sometimes one of my answer is look at how you have structured your training session and think about your warm-up. Okay, you have a very nice window of opportunity, okay, within the warm-up. If your warm-up is about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, okay, you have time toward the end of the warm-up to put some work on speed development, especially even if you want to put some technical, aspect of the speed mechanics within the warm-up, which is the most important part of the training session, and it's at the beginning, okay, of the session. So your central nervous system is fresh. If you have to learn new things, that's the right moment to do. And how we can integrate it with the compensation. Compensation sessions are required to properly regenerate energy system stores. So if I have stress the lactic system on Monday, okay, I cannot expect for the lactic system to be ready to be stressed again on the day after, on Tuesday. Yeah. So this is when compensation sessions are coming into play to allow for the depleted energy systems to be restored. One of the most common and how to say efficient compensation session are the tempo running, that increase the capillarizations, allow to properly train the aerobic system, but in a specific way, okay, by using intervals, okay, and not continuous running, which is not relevant to football, for example.
The football, yeah. So you are, let's say, when it comes to choosing the right methods of training endurance and covering distances, so you try to follow the game demands, like position demands, then just to took I don't know, 30 minutes of running, of capitalization around the field. So you will choose more tempo runs to cover the same goal.
Yeah.
Okay, Antonio. Yeah. Right now we covered a lot of aspects of strength periodization, and now we mentioned, and you mentioned something about football drills and speed, and some coaches like to emphasize speed work on measure them on a stool or something like that. But when it comes to building football drills or small-sided, medium-sided, and large-sided games and connecting that with endurance during the weekly microcycle, how's your approach to this topic and how do you manage to build your own microcycle when it comes to football drills and endurance programming?
Okay, that's nice question. When it comes to, I mentioned earlier in the podcast, remember the fact that the microcycle programming is probably the most powerful tool in the hands of a strength and conditioning coach, or any professional practitioner involved in designing the week of training. But at the same time, it's important to understand that the organization of a microcycle, but this is true with periodization in general, is that nothing is built and is sculpted in stone. So the approach is always think about, you mentioned the tactical periodization. The tactical periodization is based on one of the principles that I also mentioned earlier in the podcast. That is the team view as a complex, system, and it's very, very important to always use a feedback loop approach. So training as well as adaptation, we know that is not going to follow strict linear progression. So we need to take into account when planning to all that different fluctuations in performance, and also the fact that improvements and adaptations are not happening in a linear fashion and at the same way and with the same timing among the different players within a team. So this is where in design, in periodizing the endurance training and the football drills you mentioned, the small-sided games within the microcycle, is strictly related to the concept also of monitoring that we discussed in the first few questions of the podcast. Being able for the strength and conditioning coach, the medical staff, the physios, the psychologists, to monitor and recognize that performance fluctuations during the week allows to better understand how to plan, because we can even generalize and say, okay, I'm going to place we base our work on the alternation of energy systems on the physiology, and we can think about, okay, we're going to place the most intense training session of the week in the middle of the week, let's say on Wednesday. But we always have to rearrange and reorganize this like a feedback loop if there is a international or a cup competition in the middle of the week. So most of the time when planning and designing the microcycle and the endurance training and football drills, we have to be flexible enough to properly change any program, any plans in a dynamic way during the season, based on the feedback that we get from that fluctuations, and this is where monitoring tools can help and can support. The organization of the matches, of the games during the week. So and of course the individual state of the player. Sometimes some players recover quickly respect than others. So there are a lot of things that that needs to be taken into account, given that complexity. So the designing of training is always the result of a proper understanding of how psychological trait, physical development, recovery status, and environmental factors, all of them interact together to to give an outcome. Okay, so from my own philosophy, the designing of the microcycle is never sculpted in stone, but uh, the successful designing is again the reflection of how a multidisciplinary team is working in order to give some how to say, making sense. I like to say that, you know, the a team sport is like a chaotic element, so you need to make sense of that chaos by trying to to provide a proper synthesis of how the different practitioners within the team impact the overall outcome. That's more like a philosophical approach, but most of the time it's a philosophical approach that matches the 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 physiology of each individual player. So
A player, yeah.
my approach is very, it's quite, I would say, dynamic. So I'm always open to to change to change any plans dynamically during the season when you know we cannot really predict what's going to happen the next week. So planning the microcycle now for next week, we can create a structure, we can build a structure, but we need to be flexible enough in order to understand. One thing is for sure is
That's
that,
it.
yeah, one thing is for sure is that, especially in season, we want to closely match the requirement and keep things exclusively you know, specific. So then we can start from there and trying to adjust load, adjust intensity and volume based on several feedback provided by different elements.
Yeah, so you talk now a lot of about the monitoring and flexibility, and this is definitely something that is happening in football and in team sports, where you said it's an interdisciplinary surrounding with players that are on the other spectrum, and the system that we want to play. So all of this needs to be combined to make sense of it. And also, do you agree that coaches' tactical ideas are definitely impacting the the dimensions of the games and endurance?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's for sure. Antonio, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really enjoyed this episode and the whole topics that we covered. We covered like from the main beginning about the communication, then we moved down to the testing and monitoring, and we covered also something about strength, endurance, match day. So this episode is full of topics that are connected with football, but also individual sports and differences between them. And I would like to thank you for your time for being here with us.
it has been my pleasure, Marco, and I just want to thank you for inviting me and for the great discussions that we have.
Great, thank you. No, thank you for your time for being here, and I hope that in future we will have more projects like this. And when I'm talking about the projects, can you tell us what's your future, let's say, upcoming ideas and the projects that you are working on? And can you also tell the listeners where they can contact you or reach out to you if they have any, let's say, questions or something that they would like to discuss with you.
Sure, absolutely. In terms of project, besides of my continuous work as a practitioner myself, by providing my consulting to athletes, organization, federation, and teams all around the world, my in the next future, there will be new educational projects, especially the launch of a new version of my athletic food online course. The athletic food, it's a course that has been delivered in person. There will be an in-person version, but the first months of 2026 will be launched a new platform with level 1 and level 2 course, all about the role and the function of the food in sports performance and in the treatment of lower extremity injuries. And for any info about my activity, our Omni Athlete educational projects, and so on, they can reach out to the website, which is omni-athlete.com, or reach out to social media pages like Omni Athlete Instagram page, or send me a direct email at my personal address, which is antonio.robustelli@omni-athlete.com.
Okay, everyone, you heard how to reach out to Antonio. And Antonio, I wish you all the best in your future projects. Thank you one more time for being here, and to all of you, follow our episodes, follow what is happening on social media. We have a lot of upcoming events in the future, like webinars, new episodes of podcast. You can reach out to the blogs and anything that is included in our packages. So until next time, Antonio, one more time, bye.
Okay, Marco, thank you very much again. See you next time.